you woke up as early as we did, so thank you for that. My name is Sxsw. I'm the creative director at Beacon Fire Consulting and the leader of this band of brigands today. You can't hear me. What am I doing wrong? Is that better? Oh, yeah. Now that works. Okay. My name is Sxsw. I'm the creative director at Beacon Fire Consulting, and I will be managing this band of brigands today. Our hashtag is method tweet, and our back channel bitch over here is Adam. So he will be taking your questions and seeing what you guys are talking about. So, hash back channel bitch. Okay. Wow. Why am I not working? There we go. So to introduce the rest of these folks quickly, we have Jennifer Windrum, Geoff Livingston, I presume. He's going to get me for that one later. Dan, Michel, and Carie Lewis. We all have experience working with nonprofits in different ways and using Twitter for nonprofits, so they're going to hopefully share their pearls of wisdom with you, or just talk at you until you fall asleep. Why does fail?
I think it's going really well.
Okay. So, go back.
Oh my God.
I'm making the photographer run around like crazy. Okay. Who in this room actually works for a nonprofit? Oh, good morning, everyone. So, according to the data from the Nonprofit Social Network Benchmark Survey in 2010, 60% of you guys were on Twitter. Does that actually represent the hands that went up? Are you guys all on Twitter to some degree? Okay. Most organizations average about 1,800 followers. Who actually averages 1,800 followers? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's pretty good. So now that you have all these followers, now what? What actually do you do with them? What do you talk to them about? How do you represent your brand to these 1,800 plus or 20,000 or however many other thousand you've got? So we've come up with something called method tweeting. We made it up, and we're going to sort of tell you what it kind of is, and maybe over the course of this morning, we're going to figure out what it really works to be. As a lapsed philosophy major and a major Shakespeare geek, I've been sort of rocking on this for months. And the idea of this is method acting is when an actor sort of embodies a role to the point that they eat, drink, sleep, they take that character on. The idea of how that works for doing your identity online for Twitter was sort of fascinating to me, and I got these people to sort of go on the ride with me to figure out the best way to share that information with you guys. Like method acting, are you putting on a role? Is there authenticity involved? And these folks all represent different, oh my God, I'm not getting this right. These folks all represent sort of different angles to that. The other question is, why the hell Shakespeare? And because I'm a big Shakespeare, because you have to get a lolcat in every presentation. It occurred to me as a philosophy/theater geek that there was so much in Shakespeare that's talking about identity. I mean, all the plays are about identity, all the plays about who are you really. And some of the quotes might give us some insight for nonprofits or for organizations. How do you represent your brand? How do you find your voice online? So we figured that we try to combine those two things, and hopefully it will be successful. So without further ado, Carie Lewis from the Humane Society.
Hi everyone. So I am the Director of Emerging Media at the Humane Society of the United States. That means I handle all of the social media strategy and mobile and all things fun and cool and emerging in the world of nonprofit technology. We are an advocacy organization. Most people don't really realize that. So my quote is, "This above all, to thine own self be true." And before you Shakespeare fanatics get on me, I am going to use that quote literally in my stance on method tweeting. So I'm in favor of method tweeting because I truly believe, in order to do my job and do it well, you have to love social media and you have to love animals. And I love social media and I love animals. So next slide. Tweet what you love. If you don't believe, this is my opinion, if you don't believe in the cause that you're tweeting for, you're being fake. And the relationships you build in social media are founded upon dishonesty. So that sounds like really cutthroat, but that's what I believe. And that kind of idea in non-method tweeting doesn't work because really social media is all about transparency and authenticity. So these are some examples of some tweets from our @Humane Society Twitter account, which I used to run but have since handed off, which was very hard for me. And so the person who runs our Twitter account now, she's also in animal rescue in her free time. So she runs our Twitter account, does some other social media-esque kind of things, but in her free time she rescues animals for a local animal shelter. And I really believe that's why she's able to have a dialogue with people who are asking about their pets, about adopting. Once they've adopted, they have questions. And really, in order to have that two-way dialogue with them and for it to be meaningful, I really think that it's good that she has that background, that she's able to talk to them about those kind of things.
Hey, Carie, who actually determined the voice for your organization and how they were going to be tweeting?
Well, it's interesting because even though I don't tweet on behalf of our organization, or I don't own the Twitter account anymore, we still have different voices. And so really it's something that we started from the beginning. We are a very old organization. We were founded in 1954, and so it can come off a little stuffy. We have a very large direct mail program that is still very prominent in our organization, and so it was really a mix between our founding principles and then trying to have a voice that can talk to people in a conversational way. So we all try to stay on that kind of trail, but also get some personality, some of our personality behind our tweets. If you were following the Humane Society 2 years ago when I was doing it, it was a lot more of a snarky feed because that's kind of how I am. So
I think it's worth mentioning that almost everyone except for Geoff, and we'll get into why in a minute, has multiple accounts. I manage 2. Jennifer, you manage 3? Something like that.
Sometimes, yeah.
Dan, 4, and Carie, 6. Right.
But I tweet as my pets, so
She's the biggest.
you might not want to count that.
All right.
So this is the biggest thing that I want to talk about. How many of you know that the Humane Society of the United States works with Michael Vick? How many of you know what Michael Vick did? Okay,
Right.
So Michael Vick was indicted for dogfighting a couple of years ago, and we were one of the main organizations to bring him down for that. Now we are working with him, and when that first happened, I was not in agreement with the organization, which I truly believe that a lot of people don't agree with every single thing that their organization does, so it makes it very hard. When I was manning the Twitter account for the Humane Society and we started working with Michael Vick, I said, I can't do this. I disagree with the organization. It was very hard for me, so I took a step back. But after what changed me was watching a video of him talking to these at-risk kids who otherwise may be involved in dogfighting and had changed their ways because they would listen to him and not our CEO, basically. That really changed my opinion, and I was able to come around and speak on behalf of the organization about this issue. So in the beginning, it was very hard for me. I kind of took a step back and said, I can't do this because I didn't want to be fake. I didn't want to speak on behalf of the organization when I really did not believe in what we were doing. I have since come around, but it took a while.
What do you do when you have no choice? What if you are the sole tweeter, you must tweet, you must take the voice, and you must take the identity, and you don't believe in what you're saying?
I don't know, because I have more than one person, thank goodness.
Okay.
You should answer that question.
I will.
Yeah, which is a great segue to Dan Michel.
Good morning. I am Dan Michel. I'm the digital marketing manager for Feeding America, which is the nation's leading hunger relief organization. We have a network of 200 food banks across the country that serve over 37 million people. So I am for method tweeting, and I also have an MFA in theater, so I love that this, which I'm using very well. My parents are proud. Yeah, we both have to have MFAs. So this was a great panel to be on. So my quote was, "My words fly up, my words stay below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go." And I love that quote because I thought, when you put out the words of a tweet, you're trying to make that personal connection, and the only way to make a personal connection is to have passion, to have emotion behind it. And even though you're talking on behalf of the organization, you have to have this kind of passion. You have to, just like Carie said, you have to believe in the mission. You have to believe what you're saying, even as the organization. So I'm sure most of you, if we go to the next, have this. If you go to get your PowerPoint template, you all have the usual, company slide with all the company messaging on it. We're the nation's
and bullet points.
And bullet points, nicely laid out with bolded, so people can understand that you're the nation's leading hunger relief charity. We're a national office in Chicago, and we have 200 food banks. We distribute more than 3 billion pounds of food, which is a great thing. And we feed more than 37 million people, including 14 million children and 13 million people, or 13 million seniors. Now, despite this is all great information, and despite what your CEO or CCO or your Vice President of Communications thinks, these are not tweets.
No.
This is information that feeds your tweets, but these bullet points alone will not engage your audience, because every piece of material that you have, this is your brochure, you put it in your brochure, and this is great information, it's great for fundraising, but there's just no passion behind it. Now, thinking about my own passion, and I'm the sole tweeter for Feeding America, but in my real life, in my off time, I'm a ridiculous foodie. My partner and I, we spend many times, a meal is just never a meal. We are ridiculous chefs. In the bottom, when I was making this presentation, he was in the kitchen making those Parmesan medallions, and I tweeted Eve, and so she threw it in the presentation.
He photo texted me on a Sunday night.
So,
Yay.
yes. But as much as I love food, I realize that food is a privilege, and food should not be a privilege. Everybody in this country deserves to eat. It makes the country better, it makes the economy better, it makes everything better. And it's kind of, I use this kind of passion about that everyone needs to have food in this country that fuels both my personal and my organizational tweets. So the next slide just shows kind of what the tweets are like. And when Eve and I were talking about this session, how do you mix personality with your organization? And I equated it to, so my personal tweets kind of get the rough and tough, Dan Michel, a little crass, and the organizational is like me at a wedding. So it's, it's very formal, it's very, I'm putting on my best face for my grandma, because I don't want her to know that, that I am kind of a little crass. Actually, making this session, I reread the Feeding America tweets, and I was like, oh, it's even more formal than that. It's almost to the next level, that it's like a job interview. So after this session, I'm going to try to infuse a little bit more personality into the Feeding America tweets, because it's such an important issue, hunger in America.
Is it strange for you to talk about yourself in the third person? Like you mentioned that Dan Michel did this on the Feeding America blog.
It is, but it still is that voice and that emotion behind it. I am the sole tweeter for the organization. I don't have a team of 3 tweets like Carie does. And it is a little odd, but I think, but you have to have that, you have to still drive that emotion behind it.
I guess the question is, what happens when those personalities cross?
Like in the next slide.
Like in the next slide.
So I'm a new iPhone lover. I just got this because I'm on Verizon. I won't leave Verizon. And one day I was in a cab going home from my second job, which is a bartender. So it's very late at night, and I noticed the Feeding America on the Facebook. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And all of a sudden I've created my own Getting Slithered moment, and have now posted to the Feeding America Facebook page a bunch of gibberish. So some people were very appreciative. They had humor about it. They loved it. So I posted both to my personal and to the company that this is what happened. Thanks for your humor. Trying to drive more traffic to our Facebook page as well.
Does everyone in the room know about the Red Cross faux pas? Right.
Just to recap, the Red Cross faux pas is the tweeter for Red Cross was home, drinking beer, and how many of you have done this? How many of you posted something personal to your organizational account because you're using TweetDeck or Sxsw?
Everyone's gotten a little slizzard.
Yes. Well, the Red Cross posted something about getting slithered and drinking dogfish beer. So the head of social media there got a call late at night to remove the tweet, but after that, Dogfish Brewery came up and became one of their fun donors and called for donations to the Red Cross.
We still are today. It's been like, what, 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Still talking about it. Do you think it was right for the Red Cross to make her take the tweet down?
Oh, good question.
Because if we're talking about authenticity and we're talking about, making something out of it, she crossed her role, but now she sort of revealed herself. Who actually revealed her name? Some organization actually revealed the name of the tweet. Yeah.
Well, and the similar thing happened where, your kind of senior vice presidents and all the chiefs when they saw that there was this kind of gibberish on our Facebook page, were like, oh my gosh, look at that, that's horrible, it's, brand impression and blah, blah, blah. And I think that they should have just let it up and apologized for your mistake. And actually the apology for my mistake on the Facebook page got twice as many comments and likes as did the original post. And people realize then there's a human being behind it.
Which actually brings our next speaker up, who actually is the split personality on the panel. So forgive her if she's two-faced.
Yeah, I'm a recovering civil, if you will. The best way to describe me, I guess, is a free agent. I started a very politically incorrect and personal campaign called WTF for WTF, and then also where's the funding for lung cancer. So obviously the double entendre. For those people who get it, that's great. For those who don't, the message is still pretty clear. But I started the campaign in 2009, and I communicate with my community very openly, raw, emotionally. It's a campaign that I've devoted to chronicling my mother's disease with lung cancer. So it's very, very personal. On the other hand, I have tweeted under the guise of someone else. I tweeted under Bonnie J. Dario for a lung cancer foundation that I was working with to help jumpstart its social media efforts by using my community, helping to leverage that. But it was not my recommendation to do this, but I had altruistic intentions in helping another nonprofit get started by using, critical tools. And so, while it went against everything that I believe in terms of authenticity, etc., the intentions were altruistic. Let's see here. So my first quote.
She gets 2 quotes.
Yes. 2 for my split personality. Nothing can come of nothing, speak again. A little bit about the campaign, WTF. What I'm on a mission to do is wipe the slate clean. So I'm going to do that with everybody here. If you think that you know what lung cancer is, just wipe your slate clean, and I'm going to tell you what it really is. Because people do not understand, like my mom, that anyone in this whole entire room can get lung cancer. You don't have to smoke to get it, like my mom. And it's the #1 cancer killer of both men and women. It's the least funded by a long, long, long shot. And of course, that's due to the smoking stigma. I'll throw another stat at you. I know stats are no fun, but I just really want to, people to understand this. That 80% of people who are diagnosed with lung cancer today are either people who have never smoked or who quit decades ago. And here's what happens when you get it, just like my mom. There hasn't been any, it's been ignored. Lung cancer's been neglected because of the stigma for like more than 40 years. The survival rate, the 5-year survival rate hasn't changed in 40 years. So it's at 15%. So I'm trying to help educate people, and my mom and I are chronicling her story in a very personal way. So in the lung cancer community, I'm kind of a rogue voice where we have to continue to speak and speak loudly and speak again and again and again to have our voices heard. And like I said, I became a Twitter civil for altruistic intentions. again, because, and this happens all the time, I mean, a lot of people are ghost tweeting, but it's, again, I'm not comfortable with it, and I knew that it was going to be a temporary thing for me with the foundation, but I wanted to help jumpstart it, and leveraging my community to do that for the cause, because, hey, we need all the help we can get. So it was a good experience. I won't do it again because I really don't believe in that. And then I get another quote.
Well, this brings up actually an interesting question of your choice of your avatar. You noticed in the previous screen that she was tweeting with a picture of someone else. So, I mean, already we're sort of crossing the streams here. When you pick that avatar, do you put your logo? Do you put a photo? How are you actually representing your brand online? How are you representing your organization? You being sort of rogue, you had choices, but how does that help define the voice?
Well, I wanted it to be her photo. I mean, that definitely helps personalize it, and it's a very, very small foundation, and it's in her name. She's still alive. And so, I was just, although I was doing a lot of statistics and trying to stay away from, the personal stuff, I couldn't do a lot of the personal stuff because I didn't know her as well as I should have. So that made it a little bit easier, but definitely very difficult to do.
So defining your voice versus deceiving people with it. I mean, we talked about this the other day when we were prepping. Who thinks that the big names that you see on Twitter, that you see their picture, actually do the tweeting? And we mentioned from another hunger organization, Billy Shore at Share Our Strength, and I thought he actually did the tweeting, but apparently he doesn't. So, I mean, you'll see this is the real so-and-so, but is it really the real person? So are they just taking their voice? And I think that's an interesting thing that we've been poking around at.
Yeah, and I think most people understand that. I think most people believe that somebody else is doing the tweeting for them. For me, for it to be such a small foundation, it's not like I'm tweeting for Coke or something like that. To me, that was bothered me more.
Which brings us to our next quote.
Right, my second quote, Et tu, Brute. Again, this goes to what I felt could lead to a feeling of deception and betrayal among those loyal to the foundation and among myself. So I was very torn. Again, I knew it was going to be short-lived. I was going to jumpstart it for them, but I was very uncomfortable doing it. And it's not like I was forced to do it or anything. Again, I wanted to help a cause with altruistic intentions and help them get going. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not the foundation leader. I believe they should be hearing from the foundation leader because that's what they're expecting.
What do you think about coming clean? Anyone on the panel, actually. When you put your bio up there and you can say who you are, some people will say tweeted by another name. Some people won't. What do you guys think about doing that in your bio? Or even in your Twitter page, showing the photo? Because I know, Carie, your team actually shows their photo but has the logo as the avatar.
Yeah, so we, at the Humane Society, we have our logo as our avatar for branding purposes. But if you go to our page, our background has a bunch of different faces of who tweets, and it's got a little bio of the person who tweets. And so I know, personally, I would love to have a photo of the person who is tweeting on the Humane Society page avatar, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would be good for branding purposes. Yeah. But in contrast, with my personal account, I have a picture of me with my dog, and that's because of who I am at the Humane Society.
Well, it also goes to what your organizational strategic goals are. If we have an awareness strategic goal that we have to hit, and part of that is your Twitter presence. And so, if we're trying to get Feeding America out there, the avatar does reflects the brand that we're trying to build, since we're a young brand, about 2.5 years old. I do on my personal account identify myself as a Feeding America employee.
As do I. Which leads us into our center on the panel.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? So my name is Geoff Livingston. I'm one of the co-founders of Zoetica. We work with quite a few causes on their online communications. And my quote is, all that glisters is not gold. And anybody that's a Shakespeare fan, I was a literature major in undergrad, so I was bred on Shakespeare. It's a requirement, otherwise they take your kneecaps in no degree. All jokes aside, though, that story is about Portia. And when the Prince of Morocco came to take her hand, he was presented with 3 coffins. And in the coffins were her picture. One of the coffins were her picture. And he guessed which coffin he would win her hand. One coffin was gold, one was silver, and one was lead. And he thought it'd be insulting to have her in anything other than the gold coffin. So he chose it. And he was kind of like one of these pompous fellows, And he, of course, chose the gold coffin, and her picture was not in it. And she was glad to see him go. She was glad to see him go. And the reason why I chose that particular slide is because I think, there's a very high-budget movie there, Batman 4, with the Governor as the Iceman. And he was very glistery in that one and shiny. And that movie did not do very well because it was so cheesy. And I think that's a perfect example. It was very, very doctored up, very, very much presented to be great. And I think that's what a lot of corporate brands are. I think a lot of organizational brands are like that on Twitter. And if you look at what happened with the Red Cross, and I think you can go into the commercial side and you see what happened with Chrysler last week with the F-bomb on their Twitter account. People are outraged when they see brands really become human to some extent. And after working on Twitter now for 4+ years, it just seems like Twitter is Twitter, and people expect corporate and organizational brands to be organizational brands. They expect the icon to be the icon. They'd love to see a little wit, a little humor, a little personality, but in reality, when it comes down to it, they want you to be an organization, not a person. And they don't really care about the brand. They don't care about the brand unless it really hits a particular niche within their life. Like, for example, somebody in your family has cancer. And then you care about that when you care about that issue. And maybe that brand will own your respect for that little while. But in reality, go ahead to the next one. What people really like is people. People like people. And so often when you have a personality that's associated with an organizational brand, that personality will get 3 to 4 times the amount of followers that organizational brand will, even if they are tweeting the exact same thing in the exact same tone. And so I think we're talking about like a really siloed approach with this kind of method tweeting thing here, where you have this iconic brand. And that doesn't work. Social media is networked. Social media involves diverse groups of people that are in a community, and really, really strong brands empower their community and their individuals to speak on behalf of the brand. So just to poke a little fun at Wayne at the Humane Society, if HHUS was truly, truly, truly embracing networked communications, he would have let Carie bag Michael Vick when that had happened. Like some organizations allow dissent through the ranks. I love this brand, but sometimes it makes a bad decision. I'm not necessarily, I have to speak to my friends and say, I don't believe in this Michael Vick thing, but I believe in our organization. We're going to keep going. Think about political organizations. Not all Democrats agree on anything. Not all Republicans agree on anything. If you look at the Republican Party right now, it's crazy. Can you imagine what individual people are saying compared to the GOP and how those guys tweet? They're very diverse opinions. So I just think that we got to get back to reality on this. Authenticity is being people and brands being brands.
I think that's actually an interesting note because Carie just got sort of beat up a little bit because of her crossover between her personality and because of her brand. What happened?
So I have a lot of the opposition following me. Yes, there is a very strong, vocal, tech-savvy opposition to the Humane Society because we're in a conflict industry, which is animal cruelty. And so I have a lot of these opposition people following me. And just now in this session, one of them retweeted, somebody had tweeted from the audience about us working with Michael Vick and our employees' dilemmas. And they retweeted it to our opposition, letting them know that I was talking about it. So this kind of thing happens to me all the time. I have to really be careful about what I talk about, because it's no secret to me that employees don't always agree with the organization's stance on every single issue. But it's kind of like a, oh my God, really? When we actually talk about it, so.
So does that mean we sort of challenge ourselves here, because sometimes we think we're pro-method tweeting, sometimes we think we're not. But you know, playing a role versus being human has its downsides and has its challenges. So sometimes we lean closer to Geoff and then we lean farther away because it freaks us out a little bit. But
what do we do? So what do you guys think? Why don't you challenge the method? Any questions?
yeah, do you want to come up? There's actually a microphone up there.
Okay.
You can also send questions through the hashtag. I have a couple here already.
Geoff, to follow.
1 minute.
Talk loudly.
Yes?
Ah,
Great. Geoff, to follow up on what you're saying, that people identify with the personality, are you saying that brands should consider having @Geoff Livingston be who tweets on their behalf? Maybe not getting rid of the brand Twitter feed as well, but consider having an actual personality?
Sure. Well, look at Livestrong, for example. And Livestrong's a really good social media proficient organization, and their Twitter handle has tens of thousands of followers. But then they have Doug Ullman, their CEO, tweeting, and they obviously have Lance tweeting, and they're both obviously associated with the foundation. And those guys have, I think, in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 times the amount of followers. I mean, I think Lance, you can attribute that to being Lance, right? Celebrity. But I don't think you can attribute that to Doug. I don't think he's a celebrity. I think he's just the CEO of Livestrong.
And what does the rest of the panel think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you need to bring personality, obviously, to the brand. I mean, if it was just the yellow, the yellow band, just tweeting out statistics and whatnot. I mean, that's boring as hell. I care about the people behind it, and I care about what the CEO is doing, and I know that he's doing that. So that makes all the difference in the world. It's not just a logo, and you know that he's actually doing it.
Next question.
I came into my job's Twitter account that was already set up with the name and everything, and I've been trying to get more followers. And I also have a personal Twitter handle that I use for my freelance business. So should I create a third account? What I've been trying to do is just use my organization's account and make them personal and tell people who I am so that they know that one person is tweeting and it's one person's personality. Should I take that extra step and make it my name plus my organization?
It's a really good question, because we struggle. I mean, who in this room hasn't cross-posted? I mean, Jennifer said that she didn't know who she was until she was looking at the right column of her tweet deck and making sure she knew which account it was. So who hasn't made the mistake and done that? So incrementally, as you are adding more accounts and figuring out who you are, you start to lose pieces of that, I think.
Well, and I can add to that a little bit. I have the lung cancer me that I try to keep separate. I mean, I have at WTF lung cancer, and then I have at Jennifer Windrum. And I mean, I have more to me than lung cancer. I mean, I'm talking over here with my Jennifer Windrum as, PR, social media, journalism, that kind of stuff. But I also leverage this side of me to sometimes help get the people that I'm connected with on that side interested in my cause, because they can help. So I do cross over a little bit. Sometimes I'll send the same tweet out from both accounts, but it's very strategic, because I'm not going to deluge people who might not give a crap about lung cancer. But then I also have to let them know what I'm doing, so I kind of leverage the other side of me to promote that, or at least let people know that it's out there. So I didn't know Geoff before. I mean, he's in my Jennifer Windrum side of me, but now he's aware of WTF and helps the cause.
I think audience is actually really important to think about too, because everyone's got a different account. My personal account at Naive, I'll talk about anything and I'll be snarky as hell. But for the one I tweet for the Beacon Lounge, and that had to be slightly different. And sometimes I tweeted for Beacon Fire and my brain started to snap, so I handed that off to somebody else.
There was a time when kind of my worlds collided. There was like my personal account and my Feeding America account. We're kind of referencing each other. And then I talked with my then boss, because my personal account had a picture of me and my partner, and our demographic is, our major donors are over 64, they're heavily Republican, and they're heavily faith-based. So we discussed, what does that mean? What is, when you're the social media spokesperson? We have a social media policy, and the bottom of the policy is if you're the social media spokesperson, which is basically directed at me. But we talked about it, and I get to have my life on my personal account, as long as I'm not violating the company policy that I would in any other form, which would be, am I breaking confidentiality? Am I bad-mouthing the brand, in a public way? Which is just a general company policy anyway, and that's kind of how I treat my personal account versus the organizational account.
Does that help?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think I just need to make sure that with the organization that they continue to sort of be the person behind it, and because I do use first person and stuff like that, and I try to make it personal. I guess I could establish that a little better. And my second question, I'm sorry, is do you ever curse on your personal account?
Oh yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
You know what?
I double the fuck yes.
I'm going to actually suggest, though, less is more. Because if you're like any other person that's trying to communicate on the social web, you're probably doing a lot more than Twitter. And to have multiple accounts is a royal pain in the butt. And then you have the high potential for accidents. And so, and I think everybody on the panel will agree with this. And if you are operating multiple accounts, you should definitely have multiple tools. And a specific tool for a specific account, because otherwise you're just asking to cross-post. The other thing is that on your personal account, if you wouldn't say it to your mother, why would you say it on Twitter? And I think that's, my mom, of course, understands I'm a fresh boy, but, all things aside, if you wouldn't say it to your mom, why would you say it on Twitter? And I think that's the issue, too. I mean, if you're going to represent yourself in a certain way and you wouldn't represent your brand that way, well, there's a little bit of a conflict. And then lastly, with the organizational stuff, there are people I know that have to do both. And that's because the brand is the brand and the person is the person, and they do set up that separate second account, which says, for example, we did some work with Common Cause, and the communicator for that has Nikki for CC, and then Common Cause, so that you can tweet as an employee versus the brand.
And there's other organizations, like the Red Cross will actually have on their page, and they'll show you all the different Red Cross tweeters. Food banks will say tweeting for X. They'll have their personal picture there. So there's no answer to this. That's why we're sort of all talking about it, to figure out how do we get the brand, how do you get the identity straight, and how do you manage when it crosses.
And related to that, just really quick, because I'm seeing people asking about social media policies and things like that on Twitter. I just want to throw it out there that we're a really large organization, but we cannot get our social media policy out of our legal department. So what we do to get around that is we hold Facebook privacy webinars for our staff every month. And it really helps because it's kind of like, here's common sense kind of stuff that you need to remember, but people need to be told that, so.
My question has, something to do along those lines. I was hoping you guys could share any experiences from any legal liabilities that maybe have arisen from somebody from your organization tweeting something negligent that, as a representative, and tweeting is so spontaneous and on the moment, that, how do you make that decision? Is this a good idea to tweet it or not? And is it going to get me in trouble?
I think they're always going to get you in trouble.
I've been brought up once to the legal and HR department. It wasn't on Twitter, it was on Facebook. And it was when Rush Limbaugh, maybe about a year ago, he said basically that hungry children should dumpster dive. So I posted on my Facebook, Rush Limbaugh is an asshole. Children shouldn't dumpster dive. And then I had a link to the blog post on the Feeding America blog. Do I get to say that Rush Limbaugh is an asshole on my personal? This is a company stance. Do I get to say that? Absolutely. Do I say that and then link it to a company blog? That is implying company opinion.
Yeah.
That was tricky.
Which I seeded and I deleted that post. I didn't want to, and I fought it, but it is, you know, it's again coming back to that organizational policy. What would you say at a party? What would you say, you know, at a panel like this?
Jeff's gonna argue with me, but I think deleting something, a mistake, and then explaining it, as long as you explain it, I think the Red Cross handled their situation beautifully. But I think as long as you explain it, I think, you know, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah. No, actually, I thought
You're gonna agree with me?
I agree with that. Like, for example, Chrysler definitely should have deleted the F-bomb. You know, I mean, that's just not something you want up there. I mean, they have tens of thousands of workers that are relying on them to sell cars, and if they have the F-bomb up there, that's really difficult for them. And I think it was less of an issue with the Red Cross, but I did want to say, though, on that question, I think that's a talent management issue and not a Twitter issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you got people that are incapable of communicating, then they shouldn't be communicating. I mean, they shouldn't be in that job.
And I'm of the opinion, I don't believe in deleting anything. In my mind, it's there, and honestly, you can turn something like the Red Cross did, turn it into something good. But I think I just am not a fan of deleting anything. It's there, address it, move on.
We've all been given a gift. Like we're kind of in this new media. We're learning as well as our organizations are learning, and we're kind of learning together. And your organization, hopefully your organization is giving you the trust to speak on the organization's behalf and to, you know, maybe push those boundaries a little bit. And the organizations should let you make a mistake.
I think there's an issue too of, you know, this is not your grandma's nonprofit. I mean, nonprofits are changing, and seen by the faces that I've seen in the Beacon all week, it's getting younger, it's getting hipper, it's getting more technology savvy. So the voice kind of has to evolve with that, because you can't keep going for the 64-year-old Republican woman. You have to go for the people who are going to be the funders and the donors of the future, and those people want to see slightly more authentic stuff, and they want to see slightly better engagement that way. You don't have to drop the F-bomb, because I dropped a lot, but you have to do something that keeps people excited about your brand. Next question.
Okay, so my name is Leah, and I tweet for Mercy Corps. We're a global humanitarian relief and disaster organization, and there are two things that I really struggle with. And one of them is kind of infusing a fun personality into our social networks, because I feel like social media should be fun, and we need to be true to our brand. But it should be a little lighthearted. People should want to engage with us. And what I really struggle with is what we do is inherently serious. You know, I really love that the Humane Society has, you know, Feline Fridays and Mondays.
Oh
and
my
Yeah,
God!
I'm not even a pet. And that's great. And I kind of like, that is my dream, to be able to, you know, work where we can engage people on that level, because they're just so committed to their pets, and that's such a fun thing to do. So I guess I'm looking for any advice for people that work, maybe Dan or Jennifer, more serious topics, how you take that on. And then my second thing that I really struggle with, and would be curious if anybody has any perspective on, is trying to get leadership to tweet. And I've gotten our founder and our CEO both in failed attempts to tweet. They start and then they stop. And I'm actually really disappointed to learn that Share Our Strength is not legit, because
I was too.
I gave that to him as an example. I was like, look, it's about authenticity. They're doing it. You should be doing it too. So I'm not going to tell him that. But, you know, I'm trying to getting them to tweet, or people in the field to tweet, you know, getting our field staff. There's just a huge barrier. So any tips on how to get presented as something, you know, easy and fun and really important?
Let me address the first one, because it's like we tweet a lot about pets and things like that, but we also, I mentioned we're an advocacy organization, so we work on a lot of hardcore issues. For example, the seal hunt that happens every year in Canada. Awful, bloody, disgusting, all of that. Really hard to watch the videos, all of that. But and we tweet, you know, our advocacy alerts, take action, sign this petition. do that, but we also, this year, we're doing If Seals Could Tweet, which is a hashtag that people are going to write to us. You know how Jimmy Fallon does that on his show late at night where he presents a hashtag and he's like, now write in like, what would your mom say? You know, things like that. And so we kind of banked off that idea and we're trying to give a more lighthearted thing to a serious issue while keeping the issue relevant and tying it back to the advocacy portion of it. So making it a little lighthearted, I think it can work.
I totally feel your pain, girlfriend, because there's nothing fun about lung cancer. It doesn't involve pets. Nothing. I mean, there's not anything remotely fun about it. And I'm a serious person, but I'm actually a lot of fun. I mean, just kind of chaotic and crazy and always bouncing off the walls. And so I'm thinking, you know, I have actually probably a third personality because I'm sitting here trying to figure out how in the world do I bring my personality through WTF when I'm talking about lung cancer but still bring my personality to it. And in all honesty, I'm able to do that better through Facebook, but and more people are on Facebook in my community than they are on Twitter. But you know, I just kind of started revealing more about my personality. I mean, I'm just different things, and including you know, like for example, coming here and including those tweets there, but maybe a little bit more of my personality that's pretty snarky, because it's very, very hard. Because who I'm dealing with are people out there who are constantly tweeting me that, oh my God, my so-and-so was just diagnosed with lung cancer, how can you help me? Or, you know, it's just very, very serious. And so I just try to bring the lighthearted part of me to it in as many ways as I can. It's not a real good answer for you, but just try to bring yourself out of it as much as you can.
Okay. Next question.
My question's about the issue of, we've really struggled with the dichotomy between the personal you and the professional view. And I'm no Lance Armstrong, but I started a nonprofit that provides cancer education that is
lung cancer.
Yeah. And sadly, I'm only the second funniest person in the field of lung cancer. I can't, you know, it's a struggle to, when you are kind of a personal face of the field, you know, Lance Armstrong can't dissociate himself from Livestrong being personal. And I wonder whether, as I struggle with how to use Facebook, where it's really hard to separate the you with your high school friends versus you with your professional life, is that going to go away? Because my sense is that it's just getting more and more transparent. So you cannot easily partition you from your professional role, and the links will be made. So I just wonder how, even if we are there now, where it's possible to have multiple lines of communication, you know, how easy is it going to be to stay separate in your personal life versus your professional?
Well, you know, I kind of look at it like this. Privacy is not publishing. Privacy is not publishing, because even, I mean, I see people get really crazy about this stuff. And, you know, where they have like 8 accounts. They have this personal Facebook account, a business Facebook account, their community manager Facebook account, and you know, they did the same thing on Twitter. And the reality is you know, anything you publish on your personal page, somebody can screen capture it and throw it right out of Google, or they can put it on a blog post. You've seen it, and there's nothing that is published online that's safe, particularly on Facebook. I mean, they're going to sell your stuff, right? So, in reality, the best way to ensure privacy is to
Stay
not
offline.
publish. I mean, if you, like, you know, I have a daughter. You know, I'm not going to publish her social security number and things like that online. I mean, things just smart things. And you know, when she gets older, she's a baby now. She's probably not going to see that many photos of her online. You know, that's just the way I feel about that stuff. The other thing I was going to say is, with Facebook in particular, you can control who has access to your user experience, in the sense that you can block it from your page and all that. I kind of think that's a lot of work to go through hundreds of followers to manage them like that. If you don't want them reading your stuff, don't be their friend.
And in Twitter, you can't do that. I mean, you can follow somebody, but you can also do a search and have people. So it's impossible to protect yourself that way. So if you don't have something to say, you really just shouldn't. And you learn it the hard way.
Well, I can identify with that greatly too, because on Facebook, I mean, yeah, you can post to different groups that you create. So I have had a lot of WTFers, as I call them, personally friend me on Facebook. So I have a bunch of lung cancer people here. I have my friends, I have my social media people, my PR people, and I'm thinking, okay, I mean, how do I balance this? I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. Should I post this there? I'm like, you know what? This is just me. It's me. That's just the way it is. It's a combination, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. And that's kind of where I am right now.
And in these Facebook privacy webinars that we give our staff, I am shocked to see how many people have a personal Facebook and a professional Facebook. For one, it's against Facebook's terms of service. You shouldn't do it. And two, it's only going to get more difficult to separate yourself. I think it's only going to get more difficult, and it's too much effort.
Well, that's, Jennifer, you kind of lived that struggle between being a personal you versus the professional face, and it seems much easier to just be authentic across platforms. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Hello. I work for a nonprofit public health foundation, and I just wanted to know, how important is it to be strategic about who you're following and who is following you based on your branding? Because we do tweet on behalf of the foundation. We don't have, and we insert our personalities in it, but it's not tweeted as an individual. We tweet as the voice of legacy, and so we are very particular about who we want to follow us. But does that kind of get in the way of getting the message out there to anybody?
Can I ask why you're particular about people following you?
Well, I just think, because I think that in the past I don't know if you guys have encountered this with like spam tweets and stuff like that. So, there's alcohol, porn.
But I'm going to put
through your stream.
I'm going to put this out there right now. We use auto-follow. We follow everybody that follows us.
Okay.
Bad practice, some people may say,
Yeah.
but in order to be able to DM people, you've got to follow, right? And so we use our Twitter account for customer service and relationship building first and foremost. People complain about their address labels being spelled wrong, everything people complain about. So that's why we do it.
We have a client, National 4-H Council, and they had a huge Facebook presence, but they had like almost no Twitter presence, and they were kind of trying to figure out that strategy. And what we suggested to them was that they use Twitter as a tool to unify national and all their local chapters. And they've done that, and they've just started to really just search Twitter to find those local influencers, if you would, those local 4-H influencers, and retweet them and follow them, and it's been a great unifying tool for them. So I think it's like what Carie said, if you want customer service, if you want to put together a small community or a unique group, I would be very intentional about the use of the tool in that sense.
We talked a lot earlier about transparency, whether or not an organization should, in fact, let people know who it is that's tweeting for them. My 2 cents is I think it really depends on what your organization does.
Great.
I work for a religious organization. I tweet for work as Jewish tweets. So my philosophy is a lot of what Geoff had to say, which is once it's online, what happens online stays online. It's like Vegas. So
Shalom.
yeah. So like you said, Geoff, if you don't want your mom to see what you're writing, don't tweet it.
Yeah.
And my philosophy is very very simple. I say keep it kosher.
Don't kvetch.
Exactly. Because of what I do, if somebody were tweeting for Jewish tweets and they're tweeting on their personal account, hey man, I just had a great bacon cheeseburger, that would obviously be a new branding.
Right.
So personally, once people started to make the connection that SUSQHB was also Jewish tweets, which actually happened on my honeymoon because people realized, wait, Jewish tweets is kind of off this week and Suzanne's away. So that's got to be a connection of some sort. So once people made that connection, I started to be kind of uber conscious of what I was tweeting on my personal account because I knew, in fact, that it would affect my personal brand. So I think that's really important. And also was touched on by the group because I've definitely made a few tweets from my personal account that were meant for Jewish tweets or vice versa. And thank God they were kosher, like I said, from the personal account. What I actually do is I use different apps on my Droid for one and then the other. Just because seeing it there, you see a different look. And I definitely recommend it for people that have made the mistake and it's working. So those are my 2 cents. I think that can help us all in deciding for a brand whether they should be letting people know who's tweeting and whether they shouldn't. So thanks, guys.
We're going to have time for one more question because I'm starting to get the high sign dance over there. So go ahead.
This is one thing that we haven't really talked about at all. I went to a session yesterday about scalability, and there's a big problem because I meet with a lot of nonprofits, and most of them are established older nonprofits, and some of them, one in particular, Compassion International, and they're located all over the world. They're huge, they're established, they have tons of money to do a lot of things with. And I feel like a lot of the more established organizations have kind of gotten over the blogging hump, where they were like, we don't really understand why we need to be blogging. But now they've all gotten over that hump, and they figured, okay, we put a blog on our website, obviously that's going to increase website traffic and all that sort of thing. Well, when you're talking to them, the first thing they all want to talk about is scalability, because it's obviously that they're going to have to invest in marketing strategy and all these things if they're really going to jump into the social media thing. And at the same time, they know they need to. But the first question is scalability, and it's just always a problem when I meet with someone that's established. The new organizations, nonprofits, are all on board with it. They get it, they're down with it, but it's the established ones that have the question.
Well, yeah, I think it's funny because the established ones are still holding on to the old stuff too. And it's like if you have 15% less trade publications, for example, within the nonprofit space, let's say like philanthropy.com went under or whatever. But because of the media environment, we're seeing a lot of these trade pubs start to fade away or go online into blogs. I mean, if you have less media and less outlets to advertise, and why would you continue to spend the same amount of money on that? It should be reallocated. So to me, it's an allocation of where the eyeballs are. And that argument usually seems to work well with them.
All right, we're totally getting the finger over there. I got a thumb over there. I want to thank you guys for coming, and a couple notes. One is feel free to come up here and talk to us afterwards. We'd also love to carry on the conversation with you guys next door in the Beacon. And one thing for the true Shakespeare geeks in the audience, with one last thing to say, which is, if we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have still slumbered here, while these visions did appear. And this weak and idle theme, no more yielding but a dream. Give them your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. Thank you.
Microphone's still on? Sorry.